Hey everybody, Captain B-Nard here with your BHDL1 Week 2 recap and Week 3 preview. So we're just going to dive right into this. I'm going to assume that everybody watching this video also watched the battle video from a couple of days ago. Um, and so, yeah, now that it's been a couple of days, I am just going to give a little more of an in-depth reaction to that, as well as look forward to next week's game. So, our opponent this week for week 2 was Emerald Miner, a strong competitive battler and also a PokeTuber. We've battled him once before here on Scarlet and Violet, and so unfortunately, we did end up losing this game 3-0 to him. It was a very competitive game, a highly competitive game at that. And yeah, we will kind of go over all of the important things that happened during the game here. Um, Obviously, with the loss, the Pidgeys are going to go to a 1-1 record here. One thing that I neglected to mention actually going into this game is that both my opponent and I were 1-0, so we had both gotten victories in the first week. Not that it matters too much because there is a lot of league left to go. We are 2 weeks into a 9-week regular season, but. Um, yeah, so having said that, we're just going to go ahead and get into the um, team preview of the battle. So right here you can see the teams that we brought to the game here. So on the right-hand side, you can see his team, obviously. So he brought Dragapult, Articuno, Fortress, Slowbro, Lycanroc, Midday Form, and Alolan Muck. So I will say off the cuff here, this was actually a very difficult match to prep for. I believe that I had stated that in the battle video. But this guy has a very deep team. He drafted 11 Pokemon, and just about every Pokemon that he drafted is a viable bring pretty much every week. So that makes it very difficult to game plan his roster. So actually, he did bring some stuff that I wasn't quite expecting. Chiefly the Articuno, actually. That was the one Pokemon on his entire squad that I kind of didn't expect him to bring because I didn't feel like it had a great matchup against my squad. But he did, in fact, bring it. And yeah, there were some things that he didn't bring that I was actually quite shocked that he did not bring, and those chiefly would be the Enamorus and the Ting-Lu are the big ones, which are actually both very high point value Pokemon that he drafted very early in the draft, and also Pokemon that I thought matched up relatively well against my team too. So I was a little surprised that he didn't bring either of those. To a lesser extent, I was surprised that he did not bring Rotom Mo form, as I felt like that had a pretty decent match against my team. Also, the Paldean Tauros Blaze breed, and even the Ditto, actually, as my team obviously does some setting up, so Ditto could have countered that. So, actually, pretty much everything he brought. I think I just mentioned his entire 11 Pokemon draft, actually. But yeah, I think that was the hard thing, or one of the difficult things about this week going in was just every Pokemon seemed like it could be a viable bring, so game planning it was very difficult. But I still feel like I did a pretty good job of doing that, actually, in hindsight. Um, so looking at the team I brought, it was made up of the Wigglytuff, the Hawlucha, the Gudra, the Pincurchin, the Earthworm, and the Iron Moth. So one thing that I've heard from a few of you guys here is you were surprised that I did not bring Gastrodon this week. So the reason for that is kind of the same reason for why I didn't bring certain Pokemon to my week 1 game, and that's just that I felt like it didn't have a great match against a lot of the Pokemon that I was expecting him to bring. If he brought the Rotom Mow, that would have been bad news. The Articuno can have Freeze Dry on it, and a lot of his other Pokemon do get grass coverage. So I was a little leery about bringing the Gastrodon. I didn't think it'd have the best of matches against his team, but also I really needed to make room to bring the Wigglytuff this week because, as you can see at the top of both of our rosters here, the reason why, because hilariously, Wigglytuff is actually a perfect counter to Dragapult, which is his number one draft pick, the Pokemon he spent the most points on drafting. Um, that is the Dragapult, obviously. So, yeah, Wigglytuff is a perfect counter to Dragapult. So I really wanted to work it onto the team. I thought it had a good matchup against a lot of his team, actually. this week, so that's why I brought that for sure. So yeah, that was just kind of the situation. I was kind of torn between dropping either Gastrodon or Goodra off the team this week in favor of Wigglytuff, but I elected to bring Goodra over Gastrodon just because I kind of felt type coverage wise it had a better matchup against a lot of his team. So that was kind of the thought process there. But other than that, kind of everything else that I did was pretty standard, with obviously an eye toward countering what I thought he would bring. Now, in hindsight, I will say Gastrodon probably would have been a better bring than Goodra based on the Pokemon that he actually brought to the game. But once again, it's Draft League. You don't know which 6 Pokemon your opponent is going to bring for any given week, so that's kind of the fun and the challenge of it, is you just never know for sure. Um, but yeah, that just kind of was what it was. I didn't really have any qualms about the teams on paper that came along. I did feel like his draft kind of matched up pretty well against mine. Like, generally speaking, on paper, the 11 Pokemon I drafted versus the 11 Pokemon he drafted, I felt like his draft league did match up well on paper um, against ours. But yeah, as far as the 6v6, seemed like we were pretty on a level playing field. So that is going to go ahead and take us into, of course, our pros and cons section of the week. So, based on the game results, I only could think of one pro this week to throw up here, and that pro is that I felt like I actually played very well this week. We didn't have any huge misplays like we had in week one. I felt like the sets and strategies that I brought worked about as well as I could have hoped them to work. Um, I felt like I made some good predictions at certain points in the game. I didn't make every call correctly, but I don't think any play specifically that I made led to my downfall in this one, per se. If I could go back and change one thing, though, that would be I would choose to play this game a little more aggressively than I did. So, for the first probably like half to 2/3 of the game, maybe even closer to 3/4 of the game, there wasn't a lot going on as far as kills, knockouts, because we were both just kind of jockeying for position, trying to set hazards up, remove them, that kind of thing, trying to position ourselves to win the game. So there was a lot of jockeying for position in this game, and that kind of lasted for the majority of the game, in my opinion. So I feel like I could have been a little more aggressive at trying to win. But the problem with that was I knew he was going to be expecting the Hawlucha to try and sweep him, and he had two really solid ways to stop that in the form of the Fortress and the Slowbro. So my thought process was I really needed to try and whittle those down as much as possible before going for the kill with Hawlucha, just to give myself the best possible opportunity to win the game that way. So that's kind of why I didn't play a little more aggressively. Although, again, in hindsight, if I were to have to change one thing about this week, I would have been more aggressive in this game. But that just kind of was what it was. Hindsight, 2020. But now we'll go ahead and get into the cons. So obviously the biggest con of the week here is we did lose the game 3-0. Obviously that's not a completely horrible loss, but it's obviously a loss, and at the end of the day we're playing to win, trying to make playoffs. So a loss is a loss, and that's bad news for our team, obviously. I did state also this was a difficult match on paper, I thought, as I felt like a lot of the Pokemon that he drafted just matched up really well against a lot of the Pokemon I drafted. But the big con of the week, and I'm sure you all are going to know what I'm going to say now if you've watched the game, is the RNG, or the hacks that occurred in the game. So uh, now it has come time for us to address the enormous elephant in the room surrounding this game. And that, of course, is going to be toward the end of the game. He has the Articuno in. It is terastallized into a ground type. I switch in with the Hawlucha. I get my Electric Seed activated since the Electric Train is still up, which gives me a physical defense increase, doubles my speed thanks to the Unburden ability, and also doubles the power of my acrobatics since the item is used. So On this turn, what happens is I decide to go ahead and terrestrialize my Hawlucha into a Steel type, predicting the Ice move on his side, as that would KO me if he lands an Ice move on normal Hawlucha typing. And so I terrestrialize into a Steel type, and I go for the Swords Dance to try and set Hawlucha up fully. That is kind of like the max optimal setup with Hawlucha. If you can, on top of all of those boosts that I had just stated, get a Swords Dance boost as well. So if you're going for offensive Hawlucha trying to sweep, that's really the most common and the most optimal way to do it, obviously. So that's what I did, terrestrialize to a Steel type so I could resist the Ice and survive the Ice move. So I do that, that plays out. And he goes, I do get my Swords Dance up. He goes for the Ice Beam. It does very little damage to me, but unfortunately, we get frozen off of the Ice Beam. Hawlucha gets frozen off the Ice Beam, and that ends up pretty much ending the game right there. Because next turn, Hawlucha does not unthaw. He takes me out with a Terra Blast ground, and then a few turns later, the game is over and I have lost. So, obviously, I was very disappointed about that. Still am pretty disappointed about that. It was a very unfortunate way to lose a game. I have been thinking about this the past couple days. I will say I can't remember another instance in a draft league game where hacks has cost me that badly. I might be forgetting something, but I think this was definitely one of, if not the worst, hack moment against me in a draft league game, and obviously that sucks. That doesn't feel too good. Um, I will say though, I don't believe that it was a foregone conclusion that had we not gotten frozen there, we would have won the game. I don't think I can say that for certain, because now I'll play a little bit of what they call theory mons, which is not something I typically like to do. But for argument's sake, we'll say if I hadn't gotten frozen in that situation, Hawlucha definitely takes Articuno out with a move next turn. And from there, he basically has two options because we're tied 3-3 at that point. I have the Hawlucha, the Gudra, and the Wigglytuff left, and he has the Lycanroc, the Slowbro, and the Dragapult left. So obviously, he can't come in with Dragapult because that gets outsped and one-shotted from that range. He could come in with the Lycanroc midday, although that gets outsped as well. Now, he does have, I would assume, priority on deck with the Lycanroc. Um, However, now that we're a Steel type with the Hawlucha, we resist the Accelerock. So even if he has Sucker Punch on deck, I still think we definitely survive that at +1 physical defense if he goes that road, and then just KOs that thing. Or we just KO that thing in return with an attack. Now the interesting part comes in with the Slowbro. So if he switches the Slowbro in against the Hawlucha at that point, depending on his set, and I don't know what his specific set is for sure, we don't know. But depending on his set, Slowbro actually does have a chance to live an attack from us if it is max physical defense investment, max HP investment with a physical defense nature. It does have a chance to live an attack from us at that point, even at 50% health, which it would be left. Slowbro would be at a little above 50% health after switching in on all the hazards. Because that was another thing. There was hazard stacking was crazy in this game, and neither of us had really a great way to remove hazards. I mean, he had rapid spin on his fortress, but I had no way to remove hazards on my team, unfortunately. Um, so at the end of the game, we actually had Stealth Rock and 3 layers of spikes on both sides of the field, which is crazy. That's something else I don't think has ever happened before in a game of mine. But nonetheless, I think in that situation, it's actually a roll as to whether Hawlucha takes Slowbro out with an attack from that range. So that would have kind of been the interesting situation that would have arose had we not gotten frozen there with the Hawlucha. So I definitely won't go as far as to say that it was a guarantee that we would have won had we not got frozen, because I don't think it was. But at the same time, I do think we would have been in a very good position to win had we not gotten frozen there. So obviously the freeze was really detrimental to us. And it was a very crushing situation, obviously. So, but yeah, it just kind of is what it is. Unfortunately, that is Pokemon, and sometimes you get screwed by hacks, just to put it bluntly. That is what happens in Pokemon sometimes. I've definitely been on the wrong side of hacks in plenty of games before. As I said, not so much in league games that I can recall. This is definitely one of, if not the worst, situation for hacks that I've had in a league game. But I know how hacks works. I know that's part of the game, and just kind of is what it is. So um, I'm really hoping that we can just kind of move on from this, because my game plan, my mindset at this point is to just try and shake it off and move forward and rebound in the next week. And there, like I said, there is a lot of league left to play. 7 more weeks of regular season before we cut to playoffs. So yeah, we're just gonna hope to kind of refocus and bounce back with a big win next week. So having said that, that is going to feed us into next week. And as you can see, our game next week for week 3 is going to be against a player called R. Holder. I don't believe I've ever played him before. And here's a snapshot of his draft league team. So this is what we're going to be going up against next week. So as you can see, he has a very strong looking Sun team. Which is going to definitely be a problem for us to deal with, considering we don't have any weather setters on our team to kind of erase the sun. So this is definitely going to be another interesting week for us, another hard fought week for us, I believe. So obviously, I'm not going to reveal my strategy that I have going into this week. I am kind of formulating strategies as to how I can try to deal with this, but like I said, we're going to kind of hope for the best here, and we're going to hope that we can overcome this strong Sun team here and bounce back with a big win this week. So I definitely think it's going to be an interesting one to watch here. He does have a lot, obviously. The Torkoal to set the sun, and then he has a lot of Pokemon that could potentially take advantage of the sun. Just about everything on his roster could take advantage of the sun, aside from the last few. So the obviously the Hisuian Lilligant and the Saucebuck can take advantage of the sun with the fact that they, I believe, both get chlorophyll. The Slitherwing has photosynthesis, which takes advantage of the sun. The Hisuian Typhlosion and Hisuian Arcanine, obviously, fire types can take advantage of that power boost. So it is going to be definitely a tricky one to navigate. So we're going to do our best to try and overcome that and bounce back with a big win this week, as I said. So, but I think that'll pretty much do it for this one, guys. That's where we stand at this point, 1-1 going into week 3, and we'll just have to see how it plays out here. So, that's it. Thanks for watching again, everybody. Hope you all enjoyed. Please hit that like button, leave a comment, and/or subscribe if you did enjoy, and stay tuned for more new videos in the future. So that's it, and we'll see you next time.